Hi, I'm your host Vasco Godratt. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday this week. And this week we have with us Stacey Tora. Hey, Stacey. Welcome back.
Hi, you good?
All good over here. Enjoying the fall, soon the winter as well. And winter is a great time to sit down next to the fireplace, especially if you have one, because electricity is really expensive these days, and read a book. So let's start there, Stacey. What's the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
I must say it's probably The Girl from Eli Godratt. That's what I say. Yeah, it was a really interesting read. We actually, as a group of coaches, we sat down and did a bit of a book club on it. So for me, it wasn't even just what was written in the book. It was the conversation that came afterwards as a collective about what we took away from it and how we interpreted various elements and what we found as important to us in the situations that we were in. So it was a very, very good book. I must say, I'm not like a huge reader. I'm one of those people that if you've got a really good book, because I'm busy all the time, you tell me the highlights and I will take them. It's kind of the lean version of reading a book.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So from that book club, I imagine you had, different aspects that were discussed, and there are quite a lot of things in the goal. So what is like one or two aspects from that book club discussion that you stayed with you and you took from that?
For me, one of the big things that a number of us actually took away with being sort of like Scrum Masters and Agile coaches was how to have conversations within the business about planning and resourcing. And if something felt like it was moving away from, an arbitrary deadline that somebody had made up and nobody had questioned. So that's one of the things that I took away from it, is that looking at what the actual issues are. So often within businesses, the first solution that people go to is more people or more money, and they miss the steps on the way at looking at how to make it lean. What is the value versus effort? How do we ensure that what we are adding is adding value? How do we look at that? How do we know that? How do we ensure that? It's just the arbitrary of, we need to get there quicker. Let's get more people in. Let's throw more money at it. It's like that's not necessarily what's needed. I'm a big one about reducing waste. And I think too often in businesses, it's too hard to look at the other elements because they involve people and change and time. Whereas throwing money at it is a quick solution that requires minimal effort. Whereas I'm all about the effort. The effort means more to me.
Absolutely. And not only that, but it's attached to other values like status and power and all of those things that drive human behavior. But the focusing steps that you mentioned are actually quite critical. They're a big part of theory of constraints described in the goal, the book we're just discussing. And I'll put the link on the show notes for those, because they are a great way to go through that thinking you were referring to, right? Like, don't just throw money and time and people at the problem. Also think about maybe there's a bottleneck somewhere we can resolve, and therefore have more of what we want. Exactly. So, Stacey, that was the book. Of course, we also want to talk about teams and how sometimes they become their own worst enemies. So share a story of a team with us. Tell us a little bit about their context, and then walk us through those small steps, those little signs that at that time maybe were very small and not that important, but over time proved to be massive anti-patterns for that team.
Yeah, so it's the team that I'm thinking about is a team of people that were very similar, and they were brought together to complement each other to solve a problem, which is great because you think like-minded people, oh my God, that's amazing. We'll all be bouncing off each other. We'll all have a similar view. We'll all be able to use our expertise to align. And actually what happened was the complete opposite, because as a group of individuals, we were very used to being a group of individuals. Forcing that situation together caused a number of issues.
So walk us through that. Like, what? Let's say, I don't know, like a daily stand-up or a planning meeting. Like, how did those things come up?
Yeah. So, say for example, in a stand-up, A number of people would go through the board, but you could see that they were disengaged. They were more concerned about the piece of work that they were working on. And you could see that in terms of, sort of talking over each other, stepping back, disengaging, not paying attention. And you could see that then the stand-up became a situation where people were there to answer their question. And that element of active listening was not there. Everybody became very siloed because they were the best at what they did. Because, when we've got in industries where people bring, sort of the A-star people together and expect it to be a high-performing team, it doesn't necessarily happen because they're used to being in that situation. So what we ended up with was a group of individuals that were labeled as a team, but it was very much a group of individuals that weren't interested in other people's views because theirs was right. There wasn't this element of working together. The whip limits were ridiculously high. You come to stand up and you say, right, okay, before we pick something else up, can we stop starting and start finishing, please? And can we get it over the line before we pick something else up? And then you'd come to stand up and there was another 3 things that were started, but nothing was finished because everybody was siloed.
I'm sure that many of our listeners are listening to say, oh, wait, I've seen that, right? Like the disengagement is something that even these days is quite shocking for me, but it really happens. And it's sad that it does, but in remote settings, it's a lot harder to establish like deep collaboration with team members. So that's definitely 100%. One. The other one is the siloed, or rather the consequences of thinking only about my work versus what we are trying to achieve as a team. Yeah. But how did you solve it? Like if you would have a time machine and you could go back and do something different, what could you do differently to avoid those anti-patterns?
Well, it's actually something like that I learned from in that situation. So when I've gone into new teams, I'm already aware of this and I'm watching out for it. And I have my little personal playbook that I go to if I start seeing some of these pre-traits coming out. One of the big things I would say in terms of your stand-up is we have the 3 questions. To me, assess them. It's not, the idea of a stand-up is a reflection. It's a feedback loop. It's a reflection over the 24 hours and what you're going to go after next. So what did you do yesterday? Have you got any blockers? What are you going to do today? And as well, even using the word you and staring at a person, it's not making it encouraging to be collaborative and to parent a mob. Asking that what's going to be the goal for the next 24 hours and getting the team to discuss the goal rather than discussing individual tickets is something that can shift you out of that. Obviously, it depends on the level of the maturity of the team to whether you switch questions and at what time you switch those questions. Asking a new team on sprint 1 when they've never worked in sprints before and they've never worked as a team before, asking them, okay, what are we going to achieve in the next 24 hours might be a little bit too sort of obscure for them. So having to adjust it to the level of the level of maturity of the team is really useful as well. But that's something as a stand-up that I would do is those 3 questions are there to guide as we start. But like in bowling, when you feel like you've got it, take the side, take the bumpers down, have a go, ask some different questions, mix it up a little bit. Even then, as a Scrum Master, don't be the person that always takes the stand-up. Ask somebody else to take it. So it shows that level of engagement and then a sense of appreciation for how difficult it can be. So it might bring the engagement along a little bit more. If you find in the stand-up that they're asking 3 questions and it becomes a reporting metric and people are disengaged and switch off, get everyone rallied around for the stand-up and then you don't speak as a Scrum Master and see what happens. Yeah. Silence is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, because if there is silence, somebody will ask, hey, why are we having the stand-up if we're all silent? And that's a great cue for us to have a conversation about. Indeed, that's a great question. So team, why are we having the stand-up?
Yeah, what are we here for? You hear a lot within sort of Agile software delivery companies, we have too many meetings. It's like, no, you have too many meetings that don't bring or add value. So, and the stand-up is one that can be pivoted quite quickly because we do it daily. We can experiment on it, learn, change.
Absolutely.
But yeah, watch out for that disengagement and, try a couple of those tips.
Absolutely. Try a couple of those tips, not necessarily all at the same time, but
no.
And what you said, like daily, so like try something new daily. And I would add to that, make sure that the team is the one deciding what you're going to test next, right? You can bring ideas, but let the team decide what are we going to try out next.
Definitely. You want them to be bought in. So if people feel like they have a choice, they will give more.
And they always have a choice, even if the choice is to disengage.
Yes. And hopefully not. We're not going to teach that.
Thank you very much, Stacey.
That's okay.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.